All right, this is a serious story about something you might not think about all that often. Warnings are mounting that Russian President Vladimir Putin could soon exert control over Interpol. Now, this was a fixture of 80s and 90s crime movies, and understanding what Interpol is and its role in global law enforcement is important. It was founded in 1923. It's Interpol, the International Criminal Police Organization. It coordinates law enforcement efforts across borders in 194 current member countries. Now, two of Interpol's main functions are centralized criminal databases and Interpol notices. Each member country has a national central bureau connected to Interpol's network. With it, police can run fingerprints, passports, or national ID card numbers, even DNA, through the resources of all the member countries. Interpol notices, however, are a way for the agency's central command to coordinate international law enforcement efforts, ranging from yellow notices, which indicate a missing person, green notices, which are warnings to member agencies, orange notices, which indicate a potential threat, and the Interpol Red Notice, which is an international wanted order detailing a criminal, typically on the run, asking for help from all agencies, and essentially a Red Notice is an international arrest warrant. It's the Red Notices that Russia is accused of using against Kremlin opponents. Now, the head of Interpol is elected by the organization's General Assembly every 4 years. The president had been Meng Hongwei until he was arrested by Chinese authorities on contested allegations of bribery and corruption. The two leading nominations now are Interpol's senior vice president, Kim Jong-yang, a South Korean police official, and Major General Alexander Prokopchuk, who is one of three other vice presidents. He's also a former member of the Russian Interior Ministry with alleged ties to Vladimir Putin. Joining me now is somebody who's concerned about this, the vice chairman of Open Russia, a Russian pro-democracy movement, Vladimir Kara-Murza. Vladimir, I mean, this guy is a vice president of the organization already. What's the concern about a Russian heading Interpol?
Hello, Ali. It's good to be on your program. Well, the concern is not about a Russian heading Interpol, but the concern is a political goon who's a senior general in the Russian Interior Ministry under the regime of Vladimir Putin heading Interpol, and that is a whole different story. I mean, it is an insult to the very concept of international justice and international law enforcement to have the main law enforcement coordinating body in the world, the organization that, as you just explained, serves as the kind of the main mutual assistance body for more than 190 national police forces around the world, to be headed by the representative of a political regime that had made a travesty of justice and rule of law, that had subverted these concepts both at home domestically in Russia, turning the justice and law enforcement system into a tool of either abetting corruption or of political repression against Kremlin opponents, and that has also subverted the principles of the rule of law in all its international actions. It is mind-boggling that we are even discussing this, let alone that this seems to be the likeliest possibility for the vote in Dubai tomorrow.
Right, and you wrote a piece in the Washington Post today talking about politically motivated alerts. You and I have been on together with Bill Browder, whose book is called Red Notice, because one was issued for his arrest. I recall last summer he got arrested in Spain. He was fortunately released a couple hours later, because not everybody realizes when Russia puts one of these things out that it might be politically motivated.
Well, of course, the Interpol Constitution contains an explicit ban on the organization engaging in any activities of a political, religious, racial or military nature. And yet, in recent years, Vladimir Putin's Kremlin has used, or I should say abused, the procedures of Interpol to issue either red notices or so-called diffusion notices, both of which are kind of international arrest warrants, against people who are very obviously its political opponents. For example, people like Vladimir Gusinsky, who used to be the owner of the largest independent media group in Russia, or Leonid Nevzlin, who was the vice president of Yukos, which was a private oil company that was destroyed in a Kremlin-driven, politically motivated campaign. Bill Browder, of course, has been the most prominent recent target of politically motivated Interpol Red Notices issued by the Russian government. He's, of course, the leader of an international campaign for targeted Western sanctions against corrupt officials and human rights abusers in the Russian government, and there were several attempts to try to target him with these notices, and there were many, many others, both Russian and foreign politicians, who have been thorns in the Kremlin side, Russian opposition and anti-corruption activists, and so on and so forth. Well, now, if this vote goes ahead tomorrow, as everybody thinks it will, the Kremlin will no longer have to abuse the Interpol procedures to do this. It will just be able to place the organization at its feet, at its service. And this, by the way, is only one of the practical implications in case General Prokopchuk is elected as president of Interpol. Let's just use our imagination and think what the Kremlin, what the current regime of Vladimir Putin could do once it gets access to sensitive police databases, including home addresses of various people all over the world. Again, it is absolutely mind-boggling that we are even discussing it, let alone that this is the most likely possibility.
Well,
we're basically talking about the largest law enforcement organizations in the world being placed at the hands of Vladimir Putin.
Well, let's take this as a warning that hopefully that vote doesn't go that way. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.